Hello everyone, welcome to the Star Network podcast and my name is Zeph. Today we have our special guest Rotimi, who's the CEO and co-founder of SunFi. Hello Rotimi, how are you today?
Doing great. I'm glad to be here and part of the Star Network's podcast.
Awesome. It's a pleasure to have you. Can you tell us more about SunFi? So I've gone on your website. It's clean energy startup business that focuses on energy financing. Can you provide more information to that?
Yeah, so a lot of people in Nigeria, I guess, know about solar, but there are lots of challenges in this space in helping people transition from petrol or diesel generator to a cleaner energy source that's cheaper. So people know about it, but there are problems. I used to build a solar installation company. So we used to go and do installations in Nigeria. We did it across the country, about 500 installations. And, you get phone calls middle of the night. This thing's not working. This thing's working perfectly. And we had to work with all the trials, tribulations that people were dealing with to really understand what was most important to them with regards to energy. And one of the things that we found was while people want to make that transition, they just find the upfront cost of solar is just very high.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a quote unquote lower middle income country. So if people in US, for example, are all financing solar, why would it be less so in Nigeria, where people don't have a lot of savings to invest that huge lump sum of cash? And so we tried working with banks and financial institutions, and we also found they had a problem. They want to do it, but the technical risk involved with solar is quite high. So how do we know that this thing that you're giving to this person will actually last 5 years? It will actually save them money. Because if you don't save a person money with regards to solar, why am I transitioning? People want clean energy, yes, but first feed my pocket, save me money in a very hard economy. And so we eventually just started giving out payment plans ourselves, and we were surprised, no one defaulted. And we started just studying, okay, what was going well, what was going wrong. And I think we looked at all the other solar providers and found that, hey, everybody's struggling with regards to this same problem. Like, how can you transition millions of people away from generator to solar if nobody can access financial services to make it happen? And if you look in most countries in the world where this has happened, there's always a very strong financial ecosystem that's willing, able, and has the cash to finance that transition. And so that's where the idea for SunFi was born. Like, okay, how can we democratize the learnings that we have and make solar providers superheroes in Nigeria and help them actually make it easier to, when a customer says, hey, look, I can't buy this thing up front. It's like, don't worry, I got you. I'm part of this network. And they figured out how to help you pay for this over 3 months, 12 months, 36 months, so on and so forth. And so that was how we gave birth to SunFi, and it's been an awesome journey ever since.
Amazing.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Thank you for that introduction. I particularly like what you said about the financial ecosystem in other countries and how it supports access to solar for people. But when you look at Nigeria as a whole, there is a huge issue when it comes to retail lending. Banks don't favor retail lending. They really want to go more corporate institutional, because for them, it's a guarantee that if I loan this business money, they're going to pay me back. But with the retail aspect, it's very difficult to just ascertain how you're going to get that money back. There's high risk in defaulting, etc. So I like the narrative of SunFi being you are creating payment plans for people. And like you said you tried this out, so no one defaulted. But we have a very weak credit rating environment. So how are you able to navigate that credit risk assessment to ensure there's no defaults? How are you managing that? How are you assessing who is eligible for this payment plan? How are you doing that?
We consider ourselves a market coordinator or an ecosystem builder. So, we went from being the solar provider to enabling solar providers. So the solar provider is one of our own key customers that we focus on. How can we help you thrive? The end customer is obviously, they're paying end customer. We're all performing for them. But I think people typically antagonize the lender in the whole thing. As you said, retail lending is very hard. The credit system, even with all the data they have, it's still very hard. And the culture in Nigeria with regards to borrowing money and paying it back, people prefer ownership. in an economy which they're not, there's a very weak safety net, so on and so forth, people prefer to hold on to whatever asset that they can get. So that culture is not there as well. So we just realized that, look, these lenders, they have a problem as well. If you can give them a bigger market opportunity where it has been de-risked, it's not that they won't put money into it, but you have to show them that it has been de-risked. And so one of our main jobs, to your point then, is to study what makes the customer tick, the paying end customer. And what are the things that the solar providers need to do well in order to make sure that customer actually will pay. One of the biggest tips that we just found is that, look, if a customer, nowhere in the world does a customer not pay for energy access when it is vital to their business or to their life. And so if you go around giving someone solar for Netflix and chill, probably likely that they're going to default because I don't need it all the time. But if you're powering my dreams and my ambitions and I'm seeing the value of what you're doing, hell yeah, I'm going to pay you. And so I think that's the crux of what we do, is figuring out how to identify people that really can use energy for something good and making sure we support them in knowing how to use it, and then bringing this portfolio and telling the truth to financial partners that can make it happen.
Rotimi, thank you. That's very spot on, and I like how you sort of like categorize, and it's not just, oh, here is money for solar to any retail person, but it's very like targeted. Do I know that this person has a business? This person with this business needs solar to ensure there is continuous electricity. I like that it's very specific, and it's very interesting. I also feel like in Nigeria as a whole, this whole credit issue, there's even just the rise of like open banking. Like you have like businesses like Okra who are like, they have APIs to be able to plug into banks, so you can like see the retail person's data. How is money coming into that bank statements? What are the spending habits, etc. So we're definitely on the rise, and which is why I like your model of like payments plans, because it shows that fintechs are actually moving as well in that direction. There's access to information, but beyond what you do, this solar narrative, I mean, do you feel like it's actually improving in Nigeria? Do you feel that there is so much a heavy reliance on diesel and on-grid electricity? It's just what we know. So solar, I'm a huge fan. I'm here for it. But do you feel that narrative is changing in Nigeria? What are the benefits?
Yeah, so is the narrative changing? And is it something that Nigerians are more willing to take on? Well, I have to say, if we look at Nigeria's energy economy, we have probably right now about 4 gigawatts or 4,000 megawatts of power that's operating as we speak currently in the country. A lot of people don't know what those numbers are, but imagine like it sounds
really, really low in comparison to our population.
It's a lot of generators, but it's in comparison to maybe if you take like a US, they have like 300, just tons of gigawatts of power operating at any given point in time. We should have about a gigawatt of power for every million people. And most of that power, is being consumed in places like Lagos and so on and so forth. Maybe industrialists will tap into it because the grid, rightly so, they'll allocate power to people that are likely to pay for it. So Nigeria runs on petrol and diesel generators. Period. Right. And the problem that we've seen is there's been different waves of alternative energy systems that have come in, but everyone underestimates how beautiful of a technology the generator actually is. It's beautiful because it's power dense. In a small box, you can pack a huge punch, right? That's why the technology has been so widely distributed, because anyone can pick it up, go put it somewhere else, you can move it somewhere else, so on and so forth. It was always forecastable, though, that the price of fossil fuels would start to increase over time. And so the thing the customer is looking for is, hey, I like my generator because I don't need the grid or whatever the case may be. It's just too expensive, it's noisy, and it's also becoming very bad for our health. Nigerians don't really care a lot about the environment, I have to say, but we do. Right. And so by addressing that problem, we can address that. And so if you can address the trust issues and lack of confidence or bad experiences Nigerians have seen with the first wave of inverter, but those dusty,
the batteries, the heavy ones.
So you go to your friend's house. Everybody in Nigeria had that experience. Yeah. You see one old thing. It looks like one 1980s UPS hooked up to a car battery. It wasn't designed to give you a great experience and power your experience and your dreams. It was designed to give you temporary relief. But unfortunately, it's created a negative impression in consumers' minds. The first wave of solar providers as well were also just learning with you. So wave 2.0 is here now. It means that you have really great technologies. The types of batteries available now, the same thing in your phone, so it can last for 5, 10 plus years. Financial innovation is now here, right? What we're doing today, we couldn't have done it 5 years ago. Yeah. The installation talent is more aggressive, is way better. And so everything, all the pieces are coming together to actually provide Nigerians a really great solar economy. And because it's also mobile, you can put it anywhere, then it actually can replace your generator, but you just have to get guided to the right solution. So I think that's what will help bridge the gap for people, is educating people about wave 2.0 and helping them see that they can actually trust it, and it's different from wave 1.0, and it's accessible because there are different financial mechanisms to use to access it.
No, that's great. So in summary, what I'm hearing is trust. Ensuring that trust element with households is completely changed, and that what you're providing is actually going to work. And what I'm also hearing is just the benefits of solar just being extremely clean. So it's like clean energy, why they say alternative, renewable. And I was doing a bit of reading prior to this session, and I said, this whole climate change, there isn't a growing narrative of like climate change mitigation in Nigeria. You do have individual activists who understand that it's important. Our holiday plans, for instance, we had to be very intentional where we've been traveling to just because of the spread of wildfires. And when I read up on things like this, I'm like, climate change is 100% real, even though those fires are not entirely contributed to climate change. There are human activities that contribute to wildfires as well. But the narrative here needs to evolve. And so, which is why with SunFi, advocating for solar, advocating for financial access to get solar is very critical. For Rotimi, you mentioned something, the cost. Why is solar so expensive? So how are you guys trying to figure out like pricing structures or mechanisms for people? I mean, you're already doing that. You're creating payment plans for people, but on a larger scale with different corporates within the solar ecosystem, how are they thinking to solve that problem?
So when people want to get into the solar business, because it's, if you look at what we're doing, it's very easy to see the SunFi brand, I call it the SunFi blue and the SunFi yellow, and people will fantasize about, let me go and like build a similar business. The underbelly of the solar industry is very hard. Right, and so part of that is the reality that it's a capex, so capital intensive industry, and here we are taking capex and turning it into something that is accessible for people. Someone is taking that risk, like we're taking a huge risk in doing so. With a petrol generator or a diesel generator, you buy your small generator. Maybe you bought it a few years ago. Although if you go to the market now, the price is naturally higher. Yeah. But you can use it today. If you don't have money tomorrow, you just hold your belt. So you don't have a liability to someone. And this is what I said earlier on about Nigeria, because the credit system is not very functional here, and safety net is very, very informal and it's not guaranteed. A Nigerian naturally, if they had a choice, they don't want to owe somebody. Because because of the bad credit system as well, like the lenders don't have much choice, they might shame you. So the Nigerian person just wants to avoid at all costs, like getting into some kind of indebtedness to somebody because they've heard it's bad. And so when you're now taking something that's capital intensive up front, because there's no fuel cost. Remember, the sun is free. Depending on your beliefs, right? God has given that to us for free. And so, but how are you going to harness it? You need this equipment that takes the light, it converts it into energy, it's processed into electricity, it comes into your home. So there's got to be some equipment investment at some point to enable you to enjoy this thing for free for a long time. But because, like I said, lower middle income country, most people don't have the money to do so. And the equipment, by the way, is the same cost here or coming into the country as it is in a high income country like the US or the UK. So we're asking Nigerians to pay the same price
that they're paying in the US, UK.
that they're paying in the US, when those ones have cheap credit,
That's true.
very strong purchasing power. So this is what we saw with SunFi and just said, hey, look, this whole thing is not going to work in Nigeria or across the continent if we don't push the financial ecosystem to innovate. And how do you push the financial ecosystem to innovate? You have to show them data that if you do this, this, and this well, you can trust that a customer that needs it for something critical will actually pay for it. Then you can ultimately lower the cost of financing, hopefully, in the long term, although there's cycles in the credit cycle. You can extend the tenor of payment plans so that, instead of breaking something down over 12 months, or you can even get to a stage where you have enough data and say, you know what, just pay every day. If you don't have money tomorrow, don't pay. If you have money today, pay. Because you already know from your data that when I give this person this thing at this price, come rain or shine, if they're using it for what's critical, they will go by themselves and pay. So if we follow Steve Jobs' mentality, right, is consumer behavior is hard to change. And one of my friends at Solinta, actually, he reminded me of this recently, that we're talking about people that have lived with petrol generators since the day they were born, since the day that they could walk. They've been hearing
the sound of the gen.
Right? They've known it. They trust this thing. There's a guy down the road there, Baba Sikarat, that will come and fix the generator when there's a problem. So I trust this thing. I just don't like how expensive it is and how polluting it is and how bad for my health it is. Can you better that without maybe indebting me or putting me into a long-term liability or something? So this is all the work that is actually required. The cost side of the equipment is not going to change because we don't drive those costs. FX in Nigeria, right? Solar cost of equipment is declining around the world. It's, on a yearly basis, 20+%. The cost of the panels, the cost of the inverters, they're all going down. But because of our country, that same thing will increase. We're the only ones that face that. And so that's why the financial innovation is therefore the critical lever to reduce the cost and make it more accessible. Plus, obviously, the customers have to trust it.
No, thanks, Rotimi. You've provided like a ton of knowledge here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the sunshine here. Abundance of sunshine in Nigeria. I think we get about 5 to 8 hours, so they say on average.
Yeah.
In rural communities that are not on the grid or suffer from getting access to electricity, solar is very beneficial for them. So can you tell us more about policies that are put in place to ensure that rural communities actually have access to solar? Is SunFi developing anything, or have you done any public sector partnerships to ensure that within rural communities they're getting access to electricity? If it's not on the grid, then it's with renewable energy like solar.
The rural electrification space in Nigeria, I think it's probably now become one of the best in the world. And I want to give a shout out to Dami Ogumbi, who used to be the CEO for Rural Electrification Agency, and the current CEO as well, Ahmed as well, right? That organization was a sleeper of an organization. Nobody knew about it in Nigeria. And when Dami was appointed the CEO there, she really put a call out to the world to say, hey, y'all have been sleeping on Nigeria. It has one of the, now I think we have the high, it's either we're the second or we've surpassed India as the country with the highest amount of poor people in the world. Many of those people are living in places where they've never seen lights, or lights is, they've been abandoned by the discos. There was once light and no longer invested in. And I think she really was aggressive in using all the tools of government, she's really good at social media and using her powerful voice to illuminate the problem in Nigeria that, hey, all these places that you guys are going to, this is where the problem is worse. The grid is worse. The population is growing fastest. And all these people, they don't have access to electricity. And the world responded, from the World Bank to Kia Foundations and all these foundations. They've structured things and put a program together through the Rural Electrification Agency that is enabling thousands of mini grids by really strong entrepreneurs willing to go to these places they've never gone before to provide people light for the first time, and it's working. And so I don't even have to really do anything there because there's people in that agency today, from Ahmed to the team that was left behind there that are taking that fight on. And we're seeing a second program that's coming from the World Bank to expand the work that was done in phase one. I think phase one ended recently. Suffered some challenges through COVID, but they've kind of trued up there and they're going to expand the number of mini grids. So it's the mini grid technology. Mini grid is where you go into an area. So imagine like a community and you find a plot of land, you agree with the chief or princess or whatever the case may be as it were. Traditional ruler. And say, hey, look, we want to power your people. We'll put up poles, we'll put up solar panels on the farm, we'll transport the electricity into the town, and we'll put meters on everyone's buildings. When they pay, they will access. If they don't pay, they won't access. So this was that thing I was talking about, right? Because the guy can't commit to you every month that I'm going to spend 20,000 naira. But you have some users in that mini grid that will consume a lot of energy and some people that will consume less. And so in that way, you can form the microcosm of a big grid in a small grid. And the technology is really amazing. From a SunFi perspective, I would like to say that the rural electrification sector has gotten a lot of help and needs a lot more help and is going to continue to get help. So the technology, mini grids is there, the capital is there, the financial programs have been put in place from the World Bank to the government. They're getting lots of sector support and they will continue to. The thing that I worry about is that when all these institutions do their work, they look for what's called impact.
Yeah.
Impact is usually decided by someone sitting in Washington, D.C. that means very well, went to Georgetown or something of that nature and wants to go out into the world, either go back to their home country or go to this place where they've heard people are suffering and they want to do good, right? And they come and their idea of doing good is, all my life I grew up, I saw all these poor Africans on TV, mosquitoes, flies, blah, 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 blah. They were imagining and dreaming of the rural area. Let's be honest, right? The person in the rural area walks maybe 4 or 5 hours to go and fetch water and all these kind of things. But they're more resilient than we are. And they didn't necessarily complain to the World Bank or whoever and say, suffering. Hey, I'm suffering. There's not that much pollution except cooking with firewood and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is bad. And there's clean cooking programs that are doing amazing jobs. But those people also depend on people in peri-urban and urban areas that send them money. That's the informal sector. And so the peri-urban customer that's running the generator is the one that is polluting the country. They're the ones powering the economy. The SME is the one that powers Nigeria's economy. And there have been no programs developed, grants, incentives to address those people's needs. If we can expand the lower middle income person's income, the middle income person's income, they're the ones that send money back to that person in the village that will help them pay for the electricity, open a shop, so on and so forth. So as we're thinking about policies, we shouldn't always just think about how we can help the people in the poor areas, but we should think about how we simultaneously support the linkages between families, those that have migrated because urbanization is increasing at an increasing rate. So the families going to urban areas and their connections in the rural areas, and we should simultaneously be powering those. And that's where SunFi comes in, is to make an intervention where we go and work with governments, financial institutions and say, hey, let's do for standalone solar systems and petrol generator substitution what is being done for rural electrification. And doing those things simultaneously is what will power Nigeria. The grid will probably focus on industrialized customers, upper income customers, and people that can pay high amounts for electricity. Because to fix the grid, the rates, the tariff, Nigeria's tariff has to go very high because the cost is increasing every day of inaction. So that's the way I think about it, is how do we bridge this gap simultaneously with interventions in peri-urban and urban areas at the same time as what is going on in rural electrification is already happening. tons of support, but we need to replicate that across the board.
Amazing. Rotimi, I must say I've actually learned something new. He said peri-urban area, so I've picked that up. So I'm guessing it's like the stage just before the actual urban area, the rural.
Yeah, so it's the in-between. That's where the masses live. Now, if you take Lagos, lights in Nigeria is probably best in Lagos, Abuja.
Yes.
That's why Lagosian customers, sometimes they're hard to convince about solar and all, because they actually have, maybe they get 5 hours of electricity the rest of the time.
And that's more than enough.
That's
Because
more
then
than
you go
enough
to the office and you come back home. Exactly. Yeah.
But the guy that's in a different place, that's like, I run my generator. If you run your generator 30 days a month, there's a guy we spoke to the other day. He runs the generator 30 days a month. He's doing it for 6+ hours or 7 hours a day. Our current fuel prices, the dude is spending 300,000 naira to keep his business running. He's like, sir, I face the choice of either shutting my business down or someone has to come with something that helps me. And thank goodness we had a plan that cut his spending by more than 50%. Someone that's spending 80K or was spending maybe 40K yesterday is spending 80K today. That 40,000 naira can send his child to two children to school in a month. And so by us coming and giving him a plan that's like 35 or 40K, imagine the joy of that type of person. Now,
the impact.
Yeah. Now, we just have to get more people to trust that. And we also see this preference for ownership, as I said. I don't know why. I've described it to you. But I think one of the coolest innovations we can bring is this concept of providing people a service. Almost like your utility for energy, just like paying the grid, but it's like you're paying for solar as a service. You can pay daily, monthly, and stuff like that. So I think those things will open the market up quite a bit.
No, I like that, and thank you for providing context and solving the problem. But we've heard so much about solar, and thank you for that. Let's go into your personal. So prior to SunFi, you worked at Siemens. What was that transition like? Going from corporate to startup life.
Siemens was really awesome training ground for me. I'm still connected to the community there. I was in this thing called their FEP program. It's like their CFO program, like a CEO program and CFO program. And basically, they absorb you and they bring in 10 people per year. And I was just somehow lucky, fortunate, whatever.
Lucky or worked hard for it.
I did work hard.
You worked hard for it.
But still, out of business school to go into the program, you got exposure to executives around the world. But they're working on the cutting edge of electrification, healthcare, infrastructure in cities. I focused on electrification, so worked on microgrid technology,
as you mentioned,
which is necessary for mini grids, from Galapagos Islands to USA, Canada, Europe, transmission and distribution, and then came back to Nigeria, which was a dream for me because I grew up mostly in Canada, but I was born in Nigeria, and it was always like this dream to find my way back, but on my own terms. I'm grateful to my parents for that opportunity. So Siemens as well kind of gave me that shot to, okay, you wrote your master's thesis on this thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, go to the continent. And we were investing in grid scale. So now the grid scale power plants that should be powering this country. The thing that perplexed me is in Egypt, we built, and I say we, Siemens, built 4 times the amount of power running in Nigeria right now. Remember I said 4 gigawatts at the start? Siemens built about 16 gigawatts of power. I think maybe half or 40% of it was wind power in Egypt in 4 years. As a president's administration, and got that electricity to end consumers, metered and everything. And so I was very excited about it. I'm like, yes, I'm right where I wanted to be. All these years I've been dreaming about how to change my country, and I had the money through this company, right? The German government was willing to back, so on and so forth. In fact, the last thing I did was be part of this Siemens Presidential Power Initiative.
Amazing.
The article, the thing is out there. It's a whole program still ongoing with the government. And I really believed this was going to change. This was it. This was the act. But here we are a few years later, and I think I just realized was that while there are good actors in the space and we all have great ambitions, we've built up so much bureaucracy and inaction and lack of systems thinking and collaboration in the Nigerian electrification space that it's so hard to do something that we did in Egypt, where Al-Sisi, he made a very powerful decision. You know, he wrote a sovereign guarantee, which means, hey, all you investors come, the government will back you.
Okay.
If something goes wrong, we've got your back. And the company just went to work and built all this stuff. And I believed it could be done in Nigeria, but it hasn't been done. And that just kind of...
Would you say there's a lot more bureaucracy because of that? Like,
I think the way we've structured the power sector in Nigeria, we can have a whole
conversation about it.
But I mean, you've got like, is it 13 or something distribution companies? You've got this, power trading company. And then you've got the power generating companies. The power generating companies are getting paid, so they don't, they have, and then the guy at the end, some customers don't want to pay what they're supposed to pay for. Customers feel like they're being cheated. And there's the coordinator in the middle who's supposed to be transmitting, buying and selling electricity. Yeah. Although it has changed now. I think the regulations are changing right now. But we need to work together as a system with one singular goal of powering every single Nigerian. And all the decisions should have been or should be aligned from the generator to the guy at the end. Your incentives should be tied. When your incentives are tied, you work together as one single organism. But somehow, I don't know, I don't have all the answers. It doesn't seem to work. So it was there that I confirmed that, you know what, this thing, we have to go to the decentralized level. The generator guys power Nigeria. There's dozens of generator companies. All they've done is they built really smart distribution systems that enable people to trust their generator. Remember we talked about that. There's always a guy, a mechanic that can fix the generator. There are dozens of generators. You can access this thing anyway. That's all they did. And then the petrol thing, obviously, so on and so forth. And so my thing was, look, how do we go and replicate what has been done in the generator space,
in the solar
but with a cleaner, more affordable source? That's what I'm focused on. I believe the grid will work one day in Nigeria, but I think it's going to be purpose built for specific people. So my own personal story leaving Siemens was one of clarity, one of dejection, because it's like, hey, this is going to work, but it may not be in my own specific time. And there's a lot of things that I did that hopefully will still pan out there. But then coming into entrepreneurship had its own journey, because here I am leaving this amazing company. I was in this very exclusive program. You feel
there's a lot of value given to you there. You feel valued.
To you. You'd walk to the airport and hey, Mr. Thomas, welcome. They expect you to go to the lounge. All these kind of things. And I think the hardest thing for me is I didn't realize how much I had reshaped my identity around these perks of life. So the hardest thing for me in leaving Siemens and going into our first company, which eventually would lead me to, and my co-founders, to the epiphany of SunFi, was facing myself. Because for years I grappled with, Rotimi, man, you used to have a really good life. You used to, maybe 8 months or something after I left the company, I went to the airport. And I think the guy at Lufthansa counter, he knows me. I think his name is John or something. He's like, oh, hi, Mr. Thomas, this way. And I looked at him and I said, oh boy, levels don't change. Because my points had, because I used to travel all the time.
Yeah.
When you don't travel for a while, your points
go down, yeah.
So I said, boy, levels don't change. Let me just go where I'm going. And he just looked at me and said, just come. And I think I was so angry with myself because I was like bothered about why I wasn't, when I got to Frankfurt, why I couldn't go into the lounge and all this kind of stuff. And people were having mercy on me. But then I really started to realize that, man, the journey to doing this, achieving this mission I want to achieve with my friends and co-founders of powering millions of people, it requires that I first confront myself. Can you run the distance? You used to have all these perks, travel wherever you want to, do holidays over here, so on and so forth, drive this car, drive that, blah, 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 fly this class, fly that class. Can you humble yourself for a greater mission? Because what it requires is that you run the distance. And I think that was the hardest part for me of leaving a structured environment in which I was focused on the same mission, and kind of creating my own environment in which I will hopefully even more be able to achieve that mission.
No, thank you for sharing that, and just the honesty and vulnerability about it. And it's so funny. I knew you were going to give an airport example.
Does everyone have an airport example? I feel
like a lot of people who work with like big corporates, and you know, obviously the perks of, you know, you fly business class, or you have a chauffeur when you even land in your final destination, and all that structure essentially changes when you then leave that company.
It does.
And it's kind of like a reminder to self. I like what you said. There's a lot of self-awareness in your points, in just you not being able to fly the particular class that you would, or, you know, queue in a certain line, you're not fast tracked,
or access the lounge,
or come and stand here. But it does actually show you that the thing that you're trying to build, I think it then becomes revealing, is this something that you really want to do, or is this something that you're doing for the sake of clout? Which, you know, you have good people who genuinely, clout or no clout, they have a mission to change lives. Like, they actually feel that they are called to do this thing. Like, that is their purpose. And I like what you said about even realizing, because you go through the motions of, why am I even doing this? You know, sometimes you start something and the stress, the frustration, the challenges, and you say, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? I can just sit at home, get a nice job, or sometimes not even work, travel the world. So I really like what you said, and I know our audience is going to appreciate it. For people who are listening that are sort of in that transition phase and are confronting with, do I leave this opportunity that I have right now? I'm getting salary every month, whether or not I am pushing in the month of June or slacking off in the month of August, I'm going to get a salary, right? So that's how people are thinking, even though that should not be the case. You should always do best work wherever you are, because I feel that there's a benefit at the end of it. But then that confrontation of, if I leave this job and start this thing, what if this thing doesn't work out? What if there are failures along the line? The loan I want to apply for, what if I don't get it? But like you said, if it's for you and you believe that it is going to be like wide scale impact, it will work. So I don't believe that things would never work. It will work. And I feel that
it might lead you to,
it will lead you to something exactly, to something
else
that you've never even looked at. So if you feel that, okay, you're building a business that wants to do lending, but you find that with that lending business, this whole credit risk environment is not enabling to support you. You don't know how to get the data. You've tried different iterations of this lending business, and you realize that actually maybe my thing isn't lending. The challenge is credit assessment. I want to become a credit assessor and help banks and help people. It will have different iterations. So I like what you said, and I'm sure our audience will appreciate it.
But to your point, though, Zeph, right? Like, going through the iterations, i.e., having interim points at which you accept potential failure, right? I wanted to get A in this subject. It looks like I'm going to get C. But the difference between that C and that A now, right, is I've gained powerful knowledge. And if I reflect and I kind of am humble about the fact that I want to change people's lives, right? It will help you ask the next questions. But is there something else? I mean, do you know the app Slack?
Yeah, we use Slack,
Everybody in the world uses Slack to build powerful things and just communicating. I think the story was like the app that helped NASA put something on, a Land Rover mission on Mars or whatever, right? And the guys that built Slack, they were building a massive video game. I think he's originally from BC in Canada, but went to Silicon Valley. In the process of building Slack, I think he wakes up one day and in the process of building the video game, he wakes up one day and he just realized, I can't do this anymore. He said his body stopped. Is that, he had hired people to come across the country. They moved with their families. They all came to this place. They're all working on this thing. And he just realized one day, I cannot do this anymore. Called everybody into a meeting and told people that had left where they had safe jobs to come and work for you and be building video games. I can't do this anymore. Like, we're shutting this thing down. They built something called Hire a Genius. So this is now where you see the character of the person, right? Hire a Genius. So most of those people, he committed to finding them great jobs. And most of them went back out. The story is told, and to do amazing things in other companies. The process of unwinding what they were building, they were using a communications thing that was helping them work faster together. And the thing they were using to communicate when they were building their video game Do you know that is what became Slack?
Can you imagine?
And they went to their investors and they said, come, this is what's happening. A lot of the investors, obviously, rightly so, pissed. Some of the wise ones said, these guys, there's something he's saying here, right? He's discovering, a path. And some of them stuck with them. And imagine that. So like the journey to, even as I'm sitting here right now, please, I don't want to make it seem like I didn't come here to say I am a success today. I would prefer that you and maybe like people in the Star Network realize that I'm only a reflection of where I am standing right now. I don't know whether SunFi in 10, 15 years, I obviously I'm doing it because I believe that I'm investing time in something that's going to change millions of lives. What if it doesn't, right? Can I keep waking up every day and pursuing it as if it will? That is what is required of me, is that singular belief, like a dogged belief that working with smart people, because this thing is not about going by yourself. And that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned, is how to curate people that love you, people that are willing to go to bat for you. And if you think you're a smart person and you want to build something yourself, you will probably fail. So my own story is all what we're doing with SunFi is because I have really smart people around me that I trust. And we fight all the time and, co-founder stuff, blah, 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 blah. But I know that those guys are going to go the distance with me. And so it makes those days where you hang your head in shame easier. Because you can't run the race. You can't run your leg of the relay as fast as you should. The other guy picks it up and runs harder. And that inspires you to run harder on the next lap. And I think it's those iterations and every go around that helps you build something or discover wherever you're supposed to go to. So that's the transition from Siemens into entrepreneurship and the lessons that at least I'm learning from.
No, that's amazing, Rotimi. And I like what you said about community. I'm very big on just community. And like you said, you can't run the race alone. The race, it's a long race. It's a long journey. But finding the right people. And when I hear founders like yourself or people who are aspiring to do something, they really struggle in finding the right partnerships, the right people who are, one, aligned with our vision. They have clarity. They can even see beyond what that person with, let's call the person with the main idea, the originator. They can see beyond the originator's idea and they bring interesting perspective and say, this is how we should be looking at this in the future. And I think that can be very rare, but once you find it, you hold on to it. So like you said,
it's like a marriage.
I'm telling you, it actually is. You hold on to it because it's extremely rare. So kudos to, co-founders like yourselves, etc., who are consistently trying to make it work. I also feel when you're in a room with very intelligent people, oh my god, it's a power struggle. It's like, what are you actually saying? It really is a power struggle. But like you say, you learn so much in that discipline of there's ideas, but how can we all align for the greater good? As you said, for SunFi is to provide electricity to millions of Nigerians, which will become impactful. And Rotimi, you've said a lot of impactful things today. And the question I was going to ask you was, since starting SunFi, what is the most challenging decision or situation that you found yourself in, and how were you able to navigate that? I like what you said about you don't want us to just see you as a success, but you are still running the race. You don't know where SunFi is going to be in 10 years, and hopefully by God's grace, it would be something really big. I know where I'm taking it exactly, to, but, be something big, but I like that you mentioned challenges.
The aspect of this that has to do with what's the goal? Where are you taking it to? I mean, like, I'm running the race because obviously my co-founders, myself, my team, and God, you have to thank God for like good investors because they are nightmare stories. We have a dogged belief actually that we will change the world. Like Steve Jobs was like, it's the crazy ones that change the world. So you can call me crazy, right? So that is critical for getting through those hard times. So while I don't know because I'm not, a soothsayer, right? I believe, and I am pursuing it as if I believe. We are pursuing it as if we believe. Now, how does that relate to maybe the hardest challenge? It could be the time where we basically almost had no money in the account and we were, carrying on every day. with a brave face and smile. And you know what? My team didn't even flinch. It's like, Rotimi, we got your back. Tomwa, we've got your back. Lalu, keep going, right? They weren't quitting. They weren't whatever. It could be that time. It could be, just not sometimes being a great husband, because I had to admit one day that, this thing has become my priority, right? It's the first thing I do when I wake up. It's the last thing I do when she's gone to bed. I'm still up doing it, right? It could be that, it taking away from that and having to admit that. But I would say that the one that sticks out to me the most, when we started SunFi, because remember, we were building one thing, we realized that, okay, this is not the way to reach millions of people. You have to go from being the provider to enabling a community of providers. And so in 2021, we started thinking through the idea. And that was like the height of the COVID situation. My mom, I told her not to go to this one wedding, and she went, and I was like, hey, well, if you're going, I'm going with you, and Dad's coming, and we're gonna, let me go and protect you. She got COVID, we got COVID, and she fought for it, man. She fought like hell for almost a month and a half. And around the timing, so I was coming out of having COVID. This was around the time, actually, we made the decision to start building the new thing. It didn't even have its name yet. Its name hadn't even been born. And that was exactly around when she passed. She gave it. It's okay. I'm stronger. I'm stronger now, but I appreciate that. But the hardest thing was, and then I think, we went through one process. The guys made me, quote unquote, CEO or chief servant officer, if you will. And so I think that was the first or hardest test of my own leadership style was, what were you going to do right now? Do you need to go away for a few months and just be with your family? And so on and so forth. And somehow made the decision to show up at most meetings, keep going, and in honor of my mom. And I think that was just having the kind of people I had around me, because they kept saying, hey, this guy, go and focus on what you need to focus on. It was such a crucial moment for the birthing of this new thing. So my mom's picture is right by my desk every day. And honestly, whenever I face those tough times again with my founders and with my team, I just look at her, the pictures of her smiling, and I smile back at her and I say, keep going. She used to dance all the time. So I get up and I start dancing in my office, and then I go back to a very hard problem. So that very hard thing, I think it was like the transition from the old thing. And it was the culmination of my experience learning to shed my old skin from the corporate world where I had become this person. Everything coincided. I became an entrepreneur in that moment. Yeah. Because if you listen to a lot of the stories of people that have built amazing things, and hopefully SunFi will be, you find out that when they were closing a deal for money, the person's son was getting operated on in a hospital. And they say that leadership and resilience is born in times of adversity, not in good times. Yeah. And I think that was the hardest moment for me. And I tell you, that same strength has helped us all get through hard times together. So that's the one I'll share. Obviously, it's quite, it's quite personal,
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that vulnerability, and I'm sorry about that. And I think the audience has just what you said about adversity. You literally took the words out of my mouth. That I find that the greatest people, let's even just focus on character, are those who, when they face adversity, is how they are able to move forward with that. Thank you, Rotimi, for sharing that with us. I really, really appreciate it. But before you go, I have two closing points that I want to touch on.
All right.
So something that I tend to ask my guests is, what is your favorite quote and why?
Oh, my favorite quote. I think it's from Franklin Roosevelt, who was one of the presidents of the U.S., and it's from a speech he gave called "The Man man in the arena. That quote actually was something that during that period of time that my friend from business school had given me some time ago, and I kept going back to. His name is Kent, and he was my roommate in business school. And then my old CEO, Eric, and I, we would banter about this. But Franklin Roosevelt essentially talks about, he says it's not the critic that counts, but it's the person that actually steps in the ring, that, basically fights and fights and fights, and whose face is covered with blood and is marred and so on and so forth, who, at worst, if they fail, they fail trying. And if they succeed, they know neither the timidness or the shame of never having tried. But if they succeed, they know the victory and the sweetness of having fought for something very valuable. That's not exactly how he wrote it, because it's a long.
I remember the quote. Yeah,
it's a long paragraph, but I looked at that and I said to myself, hey, I don't want to be one of those cold, timid souls that never knew what it was to step into the ring and to fight for something that I believed in. So that quote, I carry it with me all the time. It's a paragraph, actually. Yeah. Hard to fully memorize everything, but you can express it in your own terms. And his whole thing is, look, it's not the critic that counts. So you know how you have the coach in a boxing match. There's a guy in the corner shouting, oh, you should have jabbed left. You should have jabbed right. And he says, no, it's the credit goes to the person who actually steps in the arena and actually fights for that victory.
Amazing. I know that quote. I don't remember it verbatim, but as you said, it's a fantastic quote, and thank you for sharing that. Now, the last question. So we did a giveaway on our page, and as the energy expert, I want you to answer this. So I promised the audience that whoever gets this question correct and whoever has the most likes, they must be following our page, also following SunFi. They're going to get a free spa voucher to TRTRU Spa. The question is, which fuel is the largest source of power generation in Nigeria? A, petrol, B, solar, C, diesel, or D, gas?
So when I have my way and we have our way with SunFi, solar will become number one. But leaving that aside for now, I would say the technically correct answer is gas.
Is it? I don't know. Is it gas?
The technically correct answer
tell us
from
why.
a fuel perspective
is
is probably gas. It's between gas and hydro, but for the bulk of the year, it will be gas, because Nigeria is a gas-powered economy. Yes. We have some of the largest gas reserves in the world. Most of the power plants that have been built to run on gas. So, for example, if you take Azura, which is one of the plants that Siemens built, in fact, the newest power plant Nigeria ever had, the only privately developed power plant in the country. It's half a gig there. It is run on gas. Hydro is a very abundant source that we actually have in large supply. There's only so many of those plants, but I think it comes in second. But Nigeria has tons of gas. So from memory, if I remember my Siemens days, I think it is gas that's number one source. But I have an unofficial answer. Can I give the unofficial answer? So I feel like saying gas is the politically correct one.
Yes.
The real answer,
tell us,
is petrol.
Okay, why? Because the audience is going to sweat. So why?
Because when we were developing that presidential initiative I was talking about, so I got a lot of data and did a lot of modeling to understand Nigeria's power demand. And what you find is, first of all, we're not an industrialized country. So there are only so many industrialists using gas and diesel and so on and so forth. So diesel is also quite up there. But millions of people are using petrol generators every single day to power their shops, their lives, their economies, their homes, and so on and so forth. And so if you take every one of those those petrol generators and you add up their capacity, you'll find that Nigeria probably runs on more than 25 or so gigawatts number is staggering of petrol gen. It's the largest generator market in the world.
Wow.
Now, compare that number 2025 or so, maybe generator, diesel generators, maybe that makes up its own 10 gigawatts or something of that nature, right? Now, compare that number to 4 gigawatts that I mentioned from the grid. So Nigeria runs on petrol generators.
Yeah.
Bloomberg has this article out there. It's the headline was, and this was written, I think 4 or 5 years ago or something. Nigeria runs on 8 hours of grid electricity and petrol generators. And the number is something like, then it was $12 billion a year, I think, being spent on petrol generators to fuel petrol generators. Imagine what that number is probably closer to 48. Yeah. So that is the true power demand of the country. And you can then easily figure out why we're so focused on how do you help the average person that is powering the economy. How do you help them save tons of money that they can invest in their businesses, their schools, their children, their dreams? And so that's why we do that. So that's amazing. The unofficial answer.
I'm going to give them the unofficial because I feel when people look at the spectrum of the answers, they may not have that insight that you do in terms of gas from a technical perspective. But from a generalization of, Nigerian, what am I aware of or what do I see? Yeah. It's likely going to be petrol. But Rotimi, it's been such a pleasure having you. Awesome. Thank you. We've learned so much about SunFi, what you do. Guys, don't forget to follow SunFi on our social media. If you want access to solar, even just want to learn about it, the benefits, you want specific financial plans to help you get access to this product, definitely reach out to SunFi. What's your social media handle? It's
SunFi _HQ. And you can find us on Twitter. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook. And our website is sunfi.co. And so you know what some people call it, so we're going to do a challenge one day. It's like, how do you pronounce SunFi?
I was going to say, is this SunFi or SunFi?
Look what I just did.
Exactly.
So because of the British pronunciation of finance, because it's actually short for Sun Finance.
Got it.
So that's actually the genesis of our name. The American pronunciation is finance.
Finance, yeah.
So obviously, given our backgrounds, it's SunFi, SUNFI.co.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you, and we've learned so much. And we look forward to more future collaborations and opportunities. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on social media, on our Instagram handle, which is at the Star Network Pod. And for partnership and general inquiries, you can send us an email as well to the starnetworkpod@gmail.com. Thank you guys. Until next time.